The Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Ammous, the decentralized alternative to central banking. Hi and welcome to the BookLab, and today we're going to talk about the Bitcoin Standard and why this book might be a good starting point for you if you're interested in Bitcoin as a technology or just want to find out why the current financial system feels so broken. To bring you some context, I will first give you a short history of Bitcoin and its adaptation, which is pretty crazy actually. I will also talk about why this technology matters and why it's important to learn about it and why this is a good starting point for anyone who wants to learn about this controversial, often misunderstood and possibly revolutionary technology. But first, a disclaimer. In this video I talk exclusively about Bitcoin and not crypto in general. Bitcoin is crypto, but all crypto is not Bitcoin. And this is of course not financial advice. Let's go. On November 1st, 2008, a computer programmer under the pseudonym of Satoshi Nakamoto sent out an email to a cryptography mailing list announcing that he had come up with an electronic cash system that was fully peer-to-peer, that didn't depend on a trusted third party. He had designed a payment network with its own currency where members could verify all transactions without having to trust any single member of the network. Members who spent their computer processing power on verifying transactions was rewarded with the currency. The new thing with this system, compared to other attempts, was that it actually worked. And this was the start of the Bitcoin saga. 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto publishes his white paper. The first block is mined in 2009. Now the Bitcoin system is up and running. Bitcoin becomes a digital good in 2009 when an internet exchange sold 5,050 bitcoins for $5.02. This was the first purchase of Bitcoin for money, $1 for 1,006 bitcoins. The price was calculated by measuring the electricity needed to produce a Bitcoin. It was no longer a digital game for geeks, but it was a market good with a price. On May 22, 2010, someone bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 bitcoins. This was the first time Bitcoin was used as a medium of exchange. In 2021, in order to promote financial inclusion and job creation, El Salvador became the first company to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. In January 2024, the spot Bitcoin ETFs were approved in the US. Last week they were approved in Hong Kong. This is important because it gave a legal clarity around Bitcoin, because one of the fears has always been that the governments will ban Bitcoin and the technology. Now we have legal clarity that Bitcoin is basically on equal footing with gold and other commodities. The ETFs are also a way for non-tech savvy people to buy Bitcoin, because you can do it with ease now through traditional financial services. Why is Bitcoin important and what makes it special, and how does it improve on the current financial systems? Well, one of the things is that it's decentralized. No one controls Bitcoin. The creator has vanished. And even if Satoshi Nakamoto would show up, people will probably not believe it's him, because there's so many people that have claimed to be him and they've been proven wrong, and it just wouldn't matter. And this is important because there's no one that has a disproportionate influence over Bitcoin. There is no founder around, there's no company that owns it, no country that controls it. Basically, Bitcoin exists and it doesn't give a fuck about what anyone thinks about it, it just does its thing. Having a sovereign system like this that can't easily be tinkered with, that has fully transparent code, that can't be stopped or banned is very powerful. And the author argues that this solves a big problem in our current financial system, which is that governments keep on printing money, debasing the value of the dollars, the yens, the euros that you work so hard for. We used to have a system where governments commonly back their currencies with gold or other currencies that are backed by gold. The idea that the dollar value corresponded with a set amount of gold that was held by the banks. Having your currency backed by gold is of course inconvenient for governments, because gold is scarce, it's hard to get it out of the ground, it takes a lot of energy. But that's what you have to do if you want to fund a new government program, or maybe you want to go to war. It's either finding more gold or tax your citizens more. But this problem was solved in 1971 when the dollar went off the gold standard. Now governments could print as much money as they wanted without getting any more gold in their coffers. So this was great for governments, but not great for the citizens, because it results in inflation and loss of purchasing power. And we notice this all around the world today. This is a very popular practice, and I notice it here in Sweden, because it feels like you have to run faster just to stay in place, because if you want to save up for a house, the house prices goes up faster than you can ever save your money. Having money that could be printed infinitely is not a sustainable economic system. It has been tried before throughout the history, and the book goes into all of the cases where people have manipulated the amount of precious metals in coins and whatever, and it always ends up in disaster. And this is where Bitcoin comes in. Saifedean argues, because there is only a set amount of Bitcoin, and I can't go through really all aspects of Bitcoin in this review, but I will highlight some key concepts that really blew my mind or fascinated me. So let's talk some more about scarcity. Things in the world are very seldom scarce. Not even gold is scarce, really. There's tons more of it in the ground, and if the price of gold would go up, people would go out and get it. And with more technology, we would have better precision at finding all the gold that there is. Digital things are very seldom scarce, therefore not very valuable. I mean, nothing is easier than to copy something on a computer and make copies of it that would be identical. And that's the remarkable thing with Satoshi Nakamoto, because he invented digital scarcity for a commodity. This has never happened before. Never. Not in the digital world, and not even in the physical world. It is impossible to mine more than 21 million bitcoins. There are currently more to be mined, but there will never be more than 21 million. One might ask, 21 million, that's not enough to build a new economic system on. Well, Bitcoin has another property of money. It's divisible. Each Bitcoin is made up of 100 million Satoshis, allowing us to do micropayments and buy a coffee with Bitcoin. Actually, when I did my deep dive into Bitcoin while reading this one, I actually used the Lightning Network, which is a layer 2 technology, just to send micro transactions, like fractions of a cent, to people all around the world, and that seems to work pretty well. Another interesting aspect of Bitcoin is the trustless and permissionless nature of the technology. Imagine you would like to send $10 to a random person in Nigeria. Chances are that you wouldn't be able to, or the fees would be too high, or you have to jump into a bunch of hoops that would render the effort pointless. Anyone with a Bitcoin wallet can receive and send Bitcoin. Crooks and criminals, yes, they can, and critics love to point that out. But there's also other people that can be empowered by this technology. So many people are excluded from the financial system. I mean, there's a lot of women that are not allowed to have their own financial means in some countries. They could with Bitcoin without having to ask for permission. Same goes for people in very remote villages that might not have internet or access to banks. With Bitcoin, you can receive money through SMS. Why is this remarkable? Because that means that you don't even have to have an internet provider in order to do business in Bitcoin. You only need a cell phone and a signal, and there's actually more cell phones in the world than there are people with bank accounts. There's so many opportunities for new market, and I just find that idea mind-blowing. This book is fascinating in so many ways. Not only do we get a history of money, from we started to using shells to stones to precious metals to fiat, it also gives us a history of Bitcoin as a technology, and it's a punk-ass story. It's really entertaining. It also breaks down the technology itself in detail, and you need to understand how Bitcoin works in order to appreciate it fully. You need to know how mining works, what proof of work is, what is hash rate, what is the difficulty adjustment, and what is the Bitcoin halving. It happens around probably the day I published this video actually. And this is an event that happens every 4 years, where the reward miners get for using their computers to solve this puzzle is cut in half, which lowers the inflow of Bitcoin into the market. The book also talks about the psychological impact inflation has on people. It talks about Keynesian versus Austrian economics and those kind of philosophical aspects of money. There's just so much in this book. You might be forever sorry if you don't make an informed decision about Bitcoin. It's super easy to discard it, and most people do because of all the weird scams and crypto things that are going on the surface. But I'm yet to hear about someone who's actually read up on the technology, fully understood it, and stayed critical. You need to spend 10 to 100 hours studying Bitcoin in order to understand it, not because it's complicated in any way, it's actually pretty simple, but because it's different. We have never had a finite, fungible asset before in the world, either digital or physical. How is it that no one can control Bitcoin? How is it that it's fully transparent, and why isn't it being hacked? You need to understand and be able to answer all these questions before you can decide if it is a big Ponzi scheme, which it might be, or if it's the biggest invention since the internet. I urge everyone to do some research about it so you can make up your mind. And reading about it in the Bitcoin Standard is an entertaining and good way to find out and poke around. I listened to this book as an audiobook, and that edition was slightly older than this one. And it was actually fun to read that old edition because I could take what was said in that book and kind of verify it on what's happening today a few years later, just to see if the ideas held up. I recommend this book even if you don't care too much about Bitcoin, because it's just a great book that will help you think critically and think in new ways about money, and that's always a good thing to do. The Bitcoin Standard. This is a book that probably will end up on my top list for this year, because for me this was one of the best reading experience in a long time. And so was this book, A Million Wicked Thoughts. It's been a slow run because I only had the physical copy and I haven't had too much time to sit down with physical copies recently. What the internet tells us about sexual relationships, A Billion Wicked Thoughts. This book, if you're interested in human psychology and you want to see some of the more shady sides of human psychology, then this book is for you. I'll put a review up as soon as I can. Have a great week, everyone. Let me know what you read in the comments. Subscribe if you like the content, and I'll be back with more videos soon. Next week I will publish my rundown, my curated version of the releases for May. All the top nonfiction releases will be on that list, so check that out next week. Until then, Björn out.